Hello everyone. For this lesson, I am going to discuss to you about depreciation that is related to ownership of an equipment. And the depreciation is still parts of the cost accounting that we have in the construction of a project. Alright, so for this lesson, we are going to look at the categories of equipment. What are those costs that are shaded in owning a particular equipment? And of course, we are going to focus on depreciations. And then we are going to look at those different ways to calculate depreciations that are acceptable, okay, to the IRS. And we will be looking at also those interest, insurance, and tax that are related in acquiring a particular equipment. All right, so an equipment can be acquired in three different ways. The first one is either you're going to rent, the second one is owning, that means you're buying a particular equipment, or the third one is leasing. Now, acquiring those equipment depends on the nature of the project, how big is the project, and how long will it take to complete the particular project. So those are your bases in which you will base whether you're going to rent, you're going to own, or you're going to lease a particular equipment. So the manager has that responsibility to choose what would be the most appropriate way for you to acquire a particular equipment. Construction equipment is actually divided into two major categories. Those equipment that produce, create output that will contribute to that particular project that is currently at hand. And the second one is the support equipment, which is an equipment requires to support the operations or maintenance of a material system, such as, of course, in the case of the project, such as those delivery equipment, or we have those maintenance equipment that will support the operations of our project. All right, so if you're going to own a particular equipment, these are the costs that are associated to it. The fixed cost, that is the interest, that is when you borrow money to buy a particular equipment because it's not good or clever enough to fully pay a particular equipment because you may use the money to rotate and probably acquire additional project for your company. So the option is to borrow money from the lending company to finance the buying of that particular equipment. Because you borrow money from a lending company, of course, you will be subjected to an interest as well. Just like any mechanical equipment, anytime that you drove your, say for example, your vehicle from the dealership, it start to lose its value. That loss of value throughout a period, through a given period of time, is what we call as depreciations. Okay? And of course, we have the IIT, the interest, insurance, and tax that are associated in buying that particular equipment. Those are all fixed costs, as they call it. And then we have what we call as the operating costs, the cost to make them work, such as the fuel costs, of course the maintenance as well too, tire repair, and even oil and lubrications. Now, for this particular lesson, we are going to focus more on the depreciation because that's where the bulk of the loss of cost of that particular equipment. Now, the internal revenue services, they recognize several of those methods on how we can determine the depreciations. Why is this a big deal? Because the company can deduct these particular depreciations in their accounting as part of the taxations. Alright, so those different types of depreciations are the straight line method, declining balance method, production method, and the salvage digits. We're going to take a look at it's one of those different method of depreciations. We're going to look at the straight line method. So what is that straight line method? It is uniform decrease from the end of the first year to the end of its life cycle, or what we call as the service life. The formula to calculate is very simple. D is equal to C minus S all over N. And this depreciation is uniform throughout the service life of the particular equipment. So C is the initial cost, S is the salvage value, that is the amount that you could recover at the end of the service life, N is the service life. Let us illustrate that particular formula. Say for example that we bought an equipment with an initial cost of 16,000, and you'll be able to recover out of that particular equipment of about 1,000 at the end of 5 years. We're asked to determine the book value per year. The book value, that is the value of the equipment after a certain period of time from its initial life, or the time that you bought it from the dealerships. All right, now you have a format that I uploaded in Blackboard. It is a program making use of an Excel and how to calculate it. So this is the same format that you have on Blackboard. So what you need to do is just plug in. Okay, you have to plug in the C and the S and the N, and this shaded portion here that allows you, it allows to automatic calculate those are predetermined. Okay, so to calculate the rate of depreciation, it is just simply your depreciations divided by the initial cost, and that will give you the rate of depreciations. Okay, and that is because it's uniform, all of these should be the same. So again, how do we calculate these values here? That is simply your value for your depreciation, which is actually the difference between, from our formula, that's C minus N divided by 5, and that will give you the depreciation here. And this value here divided by this equals whatever that value, that's 0.1875 times 100, that will give you the rate in percent. So that's a value that you are going to calculate, put in this particular column here, the rate. All right, so how do we calculate the remaining values here at each end? So again, the depreciation, because it is a straight line, they're all uniform depreciation from every given end of year. So to calculate the book value, okay, we need to calculate first the book value of end of previous years. On the previous year, it must be equal to this value here. And to get the book value, you just need to subtract this value here minus this, and that will give you this one here. So again, to calculate the book value of end of year, this value here must be carried over to here, and this value, subtract this one here, and that will give you the book value of any year. So if you will be asked to determine what is the book value of that particular equipment, so what's the value if you're going to sell that particular equipment at that particular year, how much will be the cost? So for example, at the end of the second year, the value of that equipment is 10,000. So by the end of the fourth year, that is 4,000. So again, this rate here, it is calculated based from this one here. 0.3 is just plug in here your initial cost, the salvage value, and the service life, and it will calculate this one here. This value here, plug into all of this one here, and plug in all of this here, unshaded portion, it will calculate those value here. All right, so that's again, you just plug in into that particular format that you have in Blackboard. All right, so that's how you use the straight line method. And of course, we have the second method. They call it the double declining method. It decline at every given period. It is not the same or uniform at every given time. So again, it depends on the type of equipment, whether those are second-hand or those that are purchased new. So we have here, it is uh, constant value. It has been established and recognized by the IRS. So the 150% divided by the sum of life year, the service life year, 200% divided by the service life year of the equipment. So, which means that it's a service life and you purchase a second-hand equipment, and it has a service life for 5 years. The interest will be, the depreciations will be 150 divided by the service life year. The same thing also with this one here. Alright, so to calculate the book value, it's a book value of previous year minus the depreciations of the previous year. Okay. Alright, so we have here again from the previous problems that we have. This time we're going to use the second table that we have on Blackboard, still on the same file. I had put here as a heading, double declining method. Alright, so how do we calculate first the rate? Now, on the problem here, it says a new piece of equipment. So it's a new piece. So here, if it is a purchase new, you have here 200% divided by the service life. And in this particular case here, the service life is 5 years. So 200 divided by 5 and plug in here now. That's 40%. There you go. So you have here those 40% values. So once you have that, what you do is just multiply this 40%, 0.4 times 1,600. So 0.4 times 16,000, and that will give you 16,400. Okay, so again, with that value here, you have to multiply by the next one. So this is 9600 times 0.4, and that will give you the depreciations of the next. Alright, so again, here is to get this value here, whatever this is in percentage, so you have to convert that into decimal. So that's 0.4 multiplied by 16,000, that will give you depreciation here. For the next one here, whatever this value here multiplied by this. So how did we get this value here? It is just simply 16,000 minus 6,400, that gives you here. Alright, so how did we get this 6,400? That is 0.4, because this is 40%, that converted into decimal, which is 0.4 multiplied by 16,000, that gives you this. So to get this value here, it is simply 16,000 minus 6,400, that gives you this value here. Alright, and then to calculate this value here, there is 0.4 again times 9,600, that gives you this. And to give you this value here, subtract these two. So this value minus this, and that will give you this one here. So to calculate this value here, that's again 0.4 times 5,760, that will give you this value here. So again, you will notice that the depreciation is declining, okay, up to the last service life. Unlike on the straight line, they're all the same. Okay, so that is the difference between the double declining method. Alright, so that's the second method. So we have here again, I have shown you on the Excel. You just need to plug in this value here, plug in this value, and all of this value here. Okay, this one here are predetermined values that we already calculated, pre-calculated using a formula. Alright, so to calculate the production method, it is usually calculated in terms of hours. So what you do is just get the initial cost minus the salvage value, whatever the number of operations in a given year, you just divide it there. Okay. Alright, so just to give you an example here, we have 16,000. There is no given salvage value, and it will operate for 10,000. So C minus S, 16,000 minus 0, 0 because it's not given here. That means there's no value at the end of its life cycle. Divide by the number of operation, that will give you $1.60 per hour. And you will be needing this one here to factor in whatever that cost that you will be anticipating that you will be losing at every given hour. Say if your boss will be interested how much you will be losing for that particular equipment after we operated say 1,000 hours. So that's how you're going to calculate. It's just 1.6 times 1,000 hours, and that will be the amount that you have lost for that particular equipment. All right, so the third method to calculate depreciation is what we call as the based on the current law. This current law, there is established percentage of depreciations established by the IRS, and it is depreciated based on the 200% of double declining method. Okay, and it says here a condition is a half-year convention is used to calculate the first year depreciations, and it is use of a table. This one here we have here the life service life is 3 years, 5, 7, 10. These are the corresponding depreciations. At the end of the first year, this is the depreciation, and so on and so forth. And the end of the fourth year, this is the depreciations that you have for the equipment. All right, so let's take a look at that. So we have here 100,000 piece of equipment is to be depreciated using the modified accelerated method. It is assumed that the equipment is a 5-year, and it is based on using a double declining method of 200%. You're asked to determine the depreciations and book value per year. Alright, so to do that, we need this value here, this rate here. Again, we just need to plug in numbers. The rest will be taken care of. The thing here is you need to figure out where we're getting those numbers here. Alright, on the previous problem, it says here a 5-year, and it is a 200%. Going back to the table here, we need the 5 years. So you will notice here we have 20, 32, 19, 11, and 1152. And anything that is beyond that, we have those depreciations here. Okay. Alright, so 20, 32, 19, 11.52, 11.52 for the fifth year. Okay. So plug in those numbers. We have here 20, 32, 19.2, 11.52, 11.52, and 5.76 years, which means that at the beginning, at the end of 6 years, that is a percentage of depreciations. All right, so how do we plug in this value here? That is the initial value. Plug in this value, this one here, and this one. The rest of this will be calculated. But basically, to calculate the depreciation, it is just your 20% times this one here. That will give you this. 32% or 0.32 times 100,000. That gives you this one here. Okay. 19.2% or 0.192 times 100,000. That gives you 19,200. And to calculate the value end of this year is just this 100,000 minus 20,000 is equal to this. If you don't mess up with this shaded portion here, it should automatically calculate the rest of this one here. So please, you're only asked to plug in those values here. Okay, those on the unshaded, and the rate here is taken from this one here. On this table, it depends on how many service life that you will be looking at. Alright, so that is the third method. So how do we calculate the interest, insurance, and tax costs? Well, that is based on what we call as the average annual value, and it is calculated on this particular formula here. C multiplied by n plus 1. We have here S, n minus 1. So what you do is just plug in the initial cost and the service life, and we have here the salvage value divided by the number of service life. It depends whether you will be dealing in terms of per hour or if that is in terms of per year. Alright, so let's take a look at this problem here. We have a machine. There is an initial cost of 16,000 and there is a salvage value, that's the S, and it will last for 5 years. We are asked to calculate the AAV, the annual average value, and assuming that the annual provisions to cover the IIT correspond to an interest of 8%, that's probably your loan to pay for your equipment, the insurance, and we have your taxes as well too. And we have to calculate that in terms of hourly, and it gives you here the operations of the equipment will be 2,000 hours per year. Alright, so plug in the equation, those given value. This is the C. We have here the N plus 1. This is the salvage value, 5 minus 1. That's the service life. Divide by 2 times 5. And this is the average annual cost that is per given year. Okay. So with the IIT, it says there is 8% of the annual average. So we have there 0.08 times 10,000. And that will give you $800. Divide by the hours of operation, and that will give you the cost per given hour. The same thing also with the insurance and the taxes. This value here, those are given from the problem. Okay, and then once you have that, you just need to add those three IIT, and that is the corresponding cost per hour for the interest, insurance, and tax for that particular equipment that has an initial cost of 16,000 with a salvage value after 5 years of 1,000. So these are given. The N are given as well too. Okay, this 8%, 3%, and 2%, those are given as well too. So you just need to use a formula and plug in. Okay. Alright, so we have the overhead and markup. Overhead, as you've learned probably in your estimating too, overhead can be either a project overhead. Those are the overhead that is directly associated to that particular project. And we have those office overhead costs. Those are back to the office that will support the operations of your company. Okay. And in the case of the project overhead costs, those are your job trailers, security fences, utilities on the job site. Those office overhead, those are the wages of mechanics, clerical workers, accountant, the vice president, renting of the office, and the utilities back in the office as well too. So those are the office overhead costs. Alright, and a lot of time those overhead costs are calculated in terms of prorated. Okay, say for example here on this particular problem, you have a plate that has a 20,000 total hours log, and for that particular unit or equipment, it logged 500 hours. And if back in your office, they have sum up all the overhead costs, and that is 100,000. So what you do is just calculate the prorated value for that particular equipment. 500, that is the log operations of that particular equipment, divided by the overall operations within your plate on your company, multiplied by the overhead cost a year. And this is that overhead cost that will be associated for that particular equipment. Again, class, this particular lecture, you have a supplementary documents that you could always go back and read it. You have also the PowerPoint as well. If you have any question, reach out to me. This will be our last lecture for the semester. So again, good luck for your final exams.